I feel like I'm going to get judged here a little bit.
I'm AJ Bruno, founder, CEO of Quarterpath. And hi, I'm Steve Barsh, managing partner, Dreamit Ventures. And this is Value Props. Let's go fly, Steve. Sounds good. Let's go. I go full power and then 90 and rotate. Steve, how's your morning going?
Good. How are you, sir?
Good. I don't think there'd be anything. There's anything that I'd rather be doing than flying this airplane with you today.
A beautiful day. A little foggy this morning, but it burned off.
A little foggy this morning, cleared up at 10 a.m. Steve's a pilot, so one part of this is just us talking about flying a lot. But one of the things I always talk about with aviation is how aviation, entrepreneurship, and sales all combine to you.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about how you got into flying and aviation in the first place.
I have loved airplanes and flying since I was a little kid. I used to write to Beechcraft, since we're flying a Beechcraft Baron today.
Yeah.
I'm like, can I get the brochure and get the little brochure with the little concentric rings of how far you can fly? So I've always liked airplanes. I first got my pilot's license when I was about 23, shortly after college. I took a long period off, about 18 years when we had kids, just a little too much going on in life. And then I got back into it about a year and a half ago. And we're getting ready to do a new show for Dreamit called Dreamit Runway. And we'll be flying kind of within a 500 nautical mile.
Dreamit Runway, you don't say.
Dreamit Runway, yeah. Saying a shameless plug.
Steve, from a career standpoint, entrepreneur, you've done a lot of different things. You've started your own company. You help and advise startups very regularly right now. And one of the things you probably help out and advise on is fundraising. And fundraising is a lot like sales. I mean, it is a sell. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing and how you're helping companies in the fundraising arena.
So like at Dreamit Ventures, what do? We're an early stage investor, seed, Series A, secure tech, health tech are the type of companies we invest in. It's interesting what you say about sales and, raising capital is a sales function. It's funny that you say that. I'd say that 95% of entrepreneurs don't get that. Don't realize, they're so passionate about the product and what they're doing with product. They realize when they're facing a customer, that's a sales process. They're selling the product. What's really interesting is when they're raising funds, they don't realize it's a sales process, right? You're not selling your product. You're now selling equity in your company. You don't understand about things like trial close. You can trial close an investor.
Wait, trial close?
Yeah.
Because people are probably not familiar with what trial close means. What's that mean?
So trial close is I want to find out what the objections to sale are. A lot of times they'll pitch an investor. They'll go through their pitch deck. They'll go through the last thing, how much they're raising, and they'll almost close their computer and say, I'm happy to take any questions. Oh, that's so nice. You're happy to take any questions. How about ask them? So that's what we're doing. I'd love to find out. Is this the type of company you'd invest in?
I totally agree with you. I've had the experience on both sides. Yeah. What you're really trying to figure out is what is it that investor cares about, and what is going to be the friction points of stopping them from actually making the investment right there. And the quicker you get to a no, the better you can move on and say, okay, this is it just didn't line up. This isn't in alignment. When you're a first-time founder, or even founders that are experienced, they want that yes, and they're just really pressing. And in sales, we have these confidence swings where we go up and down. If we get a couple closes, it goes up, and we can feel like we can take on the world. And entrepreneurship and founder is the same thing. And so when someone tells us no, we're like, what do you mean no? Right. I'm very optimistic about my business. You don't see the light. We get really ticked off and frustrated with investors from time to time. So with the trial close and that experience, have you seen that change a lot in the last 2 years? Obviously, with the pandemic, we're doing Zooms, those conversations. You all used to do road shows and meet investors in face-to-face. Has that process changed at all?
Well, the process has changed for not being face-to-face, but it's much more Zoom. Yeah. However, the deeper process, like we're talking about trial closing, all of that, we find that most entrepreneurs still make those mistakes, even when they're talking to us as an investor.
Right.
The classic ending of their pitch deck is, okay, I'm happy to take any questions. Imagine if I was selling Quarterpath and I was one of your AEs and I'm meeting with a customer, and that's it, that's our demo. I'm happy to take any questions. You killed them.
And what do you typically hear? Crickets.
Yeah, crickets. The Dreamit entrepreneur never does that. And that's why they're so successful at raising. Well, that and a bunch of other reasons.
We got some cloud cover over here. Steve, question for you. Are we allowed to fly in those clouds?
Oh, my goodness. What are my VFR rules? is we have to remain clear of clouds. It's 500 feet below, 1,000 feet above, and 2 to 3 miles distance.
I asked a pretty simple question of can we fly in those?
No, we can't fly in the clouds. I'm sorry. I thought you were
We
giving
cannot
me
fly in the clouds.
a
A pilot can't fly into the clouds? Oh my goodness, what are we going to do? We're going to turn around and we're going to make a 180 and head towards New Jersey. That's what we're going to do.
And the reason why we can't fly in the clouds, you're legally allowed to. This airplane is capable. We're just not on an instrument flight rule or IFR flight plan right now.
I'm fairly confident everyone listening is just going to be able to fly their own airplane after this.
Well, it's like your emergency checklist. You can do this. So can I interview you for a couple of minutes here?
Oh my goodness, we're reversing this.
We're going to reverse. We're going to reverse.
I've got to fly the airplane now. All right, yeah, go ahead.
So here's a question for you. Let's do some really basic sales. You said people might not know what a trial close is.
Right.
Let me ask you a really basic thing. Do customers buy features or do they buy benefits?
Benefits?
Right, they buy benefits. So here's a question for you. Now let's go back and let's talk about features versus benefits and then a startup's pitch deck from a sales point of view. I'm going to give you the end of a typical pitch we hear. What we're doing is we're raising $3 million because we're going to hire 2 more software engineers, VP of sales, and a head of marketing.
Oh, yeah?
You know what I just did?
You feature sold me.
I feature sold you.
Yeah.
Again, we see most startups, like founders are programmed. They go through, here's our use of funds, and they go feature, feature, feature. Here's all the things I'm going to do. As an investor, we say to startups all the time, you know what? I don't give a shit. What's it going to do for you? What are your goals? What do we want to hear?
What's the why?
What's the why?
The why is so important and so often missed, kind of similar. And I just went through our Series A raise in May.
Congratulations, very successful.
Thank you. We raised $12 million in our Series A, and we ended with $20 million. Why? Because every investor, once we had this, like, oh my goodness, I understand the why of what they're building, that just became immediately, I would love to invest. So, Insight Partners, of course, great fun, but then Stage 2 Capital and HubSpot Ventures, those were like the strategic players that came in to help operationalize the business. They're like, I not only see what you want to do, I want to be that one of those AEs. Like, how can I insert myself into the business? And that's what you want as a founder. You want an investor leaning into your business, right? And how often do you find yourself with your entrepreneurs and the founders that you're working with where you're like, this founder gets it, I need to put this person in front of every single person, or the opposite, this founder just doesn't get it yet. Does that happen frequently?
Not that frequently. Look, to get in and be part of Dreamit and part of the Dreamit community and what we do is hard. Yeah, a lot of investors, we take 2% of companies that we see around that, and a lot of times they don't have that edge. Some of the things we're talking about, it's easily fixable, right? That's easily. They're just, I've explained that to so many founders, hundreds of founders over the last couple of years, and they're like, oh my God, that makes perfect sense. I never thought of it that way. I never thought of it like sales.
No.
But it is. You're not selling your product. You're selling equity. And that idea about don't sell features, sell benefits. So if I'm raising the Series B for QuotaPath, the end of that slide deck is going to be, so we're raising $30 million because we want to get this company to $5 million in ARR. We want to grow to this and go to this. And the reason why we think $5 million is the right stepping stone as our next point is that's our next fundable milestone. Now, what do we need to do that? Now I'm going to get into features. We need to hire another 25 sales reps. We need 2 more people on the software engineering.
So it all cascades. They can take that high level and they can cascade it down. The next level for founders and entrepreneurs is when they're able to get that why, that milestone that you talked about, but they're also able to take that to the next milestone. So they're like 2 rounds, 3 rounds ahead of the business. And that's where you're like, oh my goodness, I can see the big picture because you've created this journey and I've been able to step up with you each way. And you're 100% right. The head count, what you're going to go do, the type of customers, your ICP, your product market fit.
What's ICP?
Ideal customer profile. Right. Because when you go to sell to folks, you don't want to just say like, well, I can sell to every single Fortune 500. Right. Well, Walmart and Coca-Cola are very different than BP. Like, why is BP and Coca-Cola, why are they the same ideal customer profile?
Right.
Founders, when they go pitch and talk about their TAM,
that's total addressable market.
Right. When they talk about TAM or today's SAM, right?
Service addressable market.
Yes. Those things, they're like trying to, again, step function up because you don't want to sell to the entire world.
Right. We like to find out from a startup, like, what's your vision? What's the world look like 5 or 10 years from now? Because
the mental model.
Where are you going? Because a lot of startups, right, they're playing like baseball, but they're hitting singles, and investors want to hit a grand slam home run.
Yeah.
I'm raising $12 million because I want to get to $2 million. That's nice. Then what?
And what?
Then what? And
Doesn't do anything for
they're
me.
thinking small ball.
Yeah.
So one of the things we talk to startups about is you need to talk about your vision. Where do things look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now? But what you need to be careful of, to build on what you just said, what you need to be careful of is, vision is, let's say you're Elon Musk, right? My vision with SpaceX is, I want to fly to Mars. Okay, but that's too hard for an investor necessarily to grok. So you can say, my eventual vision is, I want to fly to Mars. Now, let me tell you the steps along the way. My seed round is, I need to build a rocket engine and test it on the ground. Okay, my Series A is, I need to be able to get it lift off the pad for 10 feet and then settle back down. My Series B is, I'm going to fly to the International Space Station. So it's like your rounds of investing, right? Josh Koppelman taught me this very early on. You need to play 3 move-ahead chess. So I'm raising my Series A, that's my next fundable milestone. And then I think my B and my C start to give directionality of like, what does that look like and why along this path to achieve your vision?
Yeah, I love that you brought up Josh, by the way. I've pitched Josh twice, and I've gotten a no from Josh twice. That's a very common theme from Josh. And part of it is I've realized, because I know what I know now, quarter past 3.5 years old, if I could reverse back to 3 years, I'm like, oh, I could have nailed that pitch. I was just wildly too early. I had the 1.5 steps ahead. I didn't get 3 steps ahead with first round capital, and that's why I didn't nail it. But great point that you said.
And by the way, he's great and he's terrific. And I think, like you talked about a little earlier, the number one thing an entrepreneur wants to hear from an investor is a yes, and the second best thing is a fast no.
Fast no. Quick notes. So now I'm going to take it off autopilot, my airplane.
Your airplane.
All right, and we're going to go ahead and pitch up, and then I'm going to count down, and then you got to, before I get to 7,500 feet, you got to give the elevator pitch of Dreamit. You ready? All right, let's go.
Dreamit Ventures is an early stage investor. We invest in secure tech and health tech, basically seed and Series A. The unique differentiator for Dreamit as an investor is we do 2 things: customer sprints and investor sprints. All startups want more
500 feet
and want to raise more capital. That's what we help companies do. We do these customer sprints and get them in front of a tremendous amount of customers very quickly, help them raise their next round, and invest money in those companies.
All right, you out pitched the airplane. Good job, Steve. I think that's the first one that I've had to out pitch the airplane. Very, very, very good. Let's head back.
It's because you have it's because it's on heading mode. I was going to say your flight director is so unhappy with it.
Well, so we're going to go nav, and now we'll turn back. Yeah, so venture capital, tell me a little bit about that, because when you go from being a founder and entrepreneur yourself to the dark side, it's always a cross that I've thought about a lot, but like, why did you make that cross?
I was between things. Josh Koppelman saw me one day, and literally, we were in the parking lot. He's like, what are you up to? I was like, I'm trying to figure out my next thing. He's like, why don't you camp out with the first round for a while and see what venture's like? You probably like it. And he was right. And I hung out with First Round Capital for about a year, learned a lot of the ropes from him. It was a tremendous experience, and really enjoyed it. Enjoy working with early stage founders and help them understand what it's like from an investor's perspective, having been an operator. In my mind, I'm still an operator. I help operate Dreamit. It's just a different type of company.
Yeah. So a lot of wins in those times, but actually more interested in like the challenges and the failures. We hear a lot about founders failing fast, but what are some times where like things weren't going well
for my venture?
For you.
Yeah. I mean, we just did a Dreamit dose on this. We talked about, when do you shut down a company? You know when to raise. They talk about pivoting all the time. How do you know where you say, you know what, it's time to pack up my marbles and go home? Yeah. It's a very hard thing, and I had to do it. I was a company backed by a whole bunch of really great VCs where they called me one day and said, Steve, stop. We've written off the investment, and we think you should shut it down. I was like, well, I don't want to give up. I have all your money. It's like, it's not a lot. This is what we do for a living. We've written off the investment, and you need to too.
So you literally had to be told to stop.
Yeah, I had to be told, stop. You've got to stop. Your opportunity cost is too high. Move on. And it took me a few weeks to let that settle in. I was like, but I have other people's money. I felt really guilty about it. They're like, move on. Because they see too many startups become the Walking Dead. Right? They just kind of limber along and nothing happens for years.
The other thing the founders don't understand is you actually have to have money to shut down a company.
Correct. Yeah.
I mean, I think I've heard upwards of $100,000 to wind it down, to actually shut it down.
And you have to meet all your you have to meet all your payroll obligations, payroll taxes.
Yeah.
And here's a quick question for you, AJ. We're gonna flip the interview for a minute. My airplane. Just kidding. What percentage of startups don't make it?
Oh, 99%.
More than
I mean,
half.
I don't know what the numbers are today. I know that, so Series A companies, the ones that don't make it, it's still 90%.
I don't know if it's quite that high, but here's my point. So if 80, let's just say above 60% of startups don't make it, so who tells them what to do?
I'm thankful I haven't had to have that happen to my companies yet. I have had to advise founders to do that as well.
Right.
The biggest thing that I think is under, and I don't know if you talked about this in the dose, is your family and your spouses. I mean, I know people have gotten divorced because their startup has driven them into the ground.
Right.
I myself ended up in the hospital for 6 weeks because I had an ulcer in my throat because of the stress of a startup.
Wow.
And we were successful. We were doing $20 million in revenue in that 3-year sprint, but I just couldn't do it anymore. So regardless if you have to shut down a company or you're going super successfully well, we're all there. Entrepreneurship and founders is a very, very lonely road. We both know this.
Yeah, and it's hard, and it's a roller coaster. The emotions are, the highs are great, and the lows are just suck.
What would you say is your superpower during your career? This could be a superpower that you give to be a part on founders, just superpower in general.
Knowing the right question to ask. It's not having the answer, it's knowing the right question to ask.
Yeah.
And then doing critical thinking to keep probing down to kind of get to the root cause of things. If you ask the right question, it's amazing when you're talking to a founder, for instance, how their business model suddenly opens up and either falls apart or gets more interesting.
They got to get a touch and go as well. All right, we're going to switch and get prepared for landing. That is how you do that.
Very smooth. Very nice.